Fight.
Welcome back to the Two Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everett. Before we get into the lengthy episode with Grayson, I didn't want to waste too much time at the top. You'll hear me intro him. He's been on the show many a times. Doing midseason awards with him. Really great time. Obviously, some OKC Thunder propaganda in there, but well-deserved, as we established and talked about on the show. Don't forget that SeatGeek is the presenting sponsor of the Two Pointers Podcast. Link in the top of the description or in the SeatGeek app. Code Two Pointers will get you $20 off your first purchase. Sporting events, concerts, basketball games, of course. Plenty of loaded conference slate games, NBA games for super cheap right now. So $20 off your first purchase. Code Two Pointers, TWOPOINTERS. Don't forget to use that link in the top of the description. Grayson's links will also be down below for the podcast 1009, his personal stuff. Follow along there. A lot of great gambling content, baseball, Clemson sports. I greatly appreciate him as always. Enjoy the show. As you heard in the intro, or saw in the intro, or read the title, or you're smart enough to figure it out, it's the middle of the year, roughly 7-ish games past when we were supposed to do this, or when I started thinking about doing this. But long-winded enough to say that we are doing mid-season awards, one of my favorite shows we do every year. First of all, welcome back. Second of all, tell people where they can find you and your work. And, obviously you've been keeping everybody updated with football since my audience doesn't get a lick of that here. So, first of all, how are you?
Good. This is I have no idea how many times appearance, but it's always fun. This, like you said, is one of my favorite ones to do. Just kind of a midseason check-in on the league as a whole and what we think as far as awards, based on to this point. Me and my college buddies, like you alluded to, have a podcast, the 1009 podcast. We're football heavy, baseball heavy. I'm the sole consumer of basketball, so I sneak in 5 to 10 minutes every episode. I get a lot of my basketball from people like Trevor, which is very good. He's always putting out things written, spoken, recorded, all that good stuff. So, but yeah, we'll be talking the AFC, NFC championship game reactions. We'll record tomorrow, have it out Wednesday, hopefully. And then we'll get you ready for the Super Bowl. And then eventually we'll bleed into baseball season, NBA, NHL playoffs as we get into the dog days this summer.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to that lull period where like everyone's just
Right.
like, all right, cool. What happened in that Tuesday night clash of the AL West? It's like, oh my God, like here we are. It's my favorite time because you got to get creative with content if you don't care about baseball as much as I used to, at least, which I don't. So a couple things. This is just housekeeping stuff that people need to know. For those that are new to this show, clarify that mid-season awards are who we would vote for if the season ended today. I don't feel like I should have to say that, but every year it feels like there's someone in my comment section or my mentions or in a text thread that's just like, why would you vote for that guy? He's not going to miss that many games or this or that, right? I'm sick of hearing it, so I'm just putting it up at the top. Mid-season awards are who we would vote for if the season ended right now. And I say midseason, again, I know we've passed that point. But I used to do these at the All-Star break, so which clearly isn't the middle of the season, albeit it's only like another week and a half from now. But, we're recording this on Monday the 29th, so all the 29th games got a loaded slate tonight. All the stats that I pulled were from Sunday night, so the 28th on, this will be outdated from a statistical standpoint, so bear with that. And then I want to lead out with a question just to kind of get things figured out without revealing an answer. Which award did you struggle with the most? Which award did you over-research like I did and sit there and be like, I have no answer here? At least maybe not.
Most research probably Rookie of the Year because I think it's one of the more compelling ones. As far as just drawing a blank, probably Sixth Man of the Year pretty easily. The once great Lou Williams Award is kind of that old guard has come and gone. So it's actually there's like 5 or 6 guys. I looked at the odds just to give myself some kind of benchmark, and that didn't really unmuddy the waters very much. So that would be an interesting one to track.
For me, it was Defensive Player of the Year, and the answer I'm going to give you, because I have them in order. I hope this is the order. If not, we'll just go with it. It's the order I texted you. MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, Sixth Man of the Year. Pretty typical order that we've gone in before. Most Improved Player, Coach of the Year. This is for the listeners as well. Clutch Player of the Year. Still can't figure out. They needed to give Jerry West an award, even though he's the logo. I don't really understand. All NBA teams. I think it's just a flex that the stats exist for that now. All NBA teams, we're actually going to hit them all. They'll probably be the most focal point of the conversation today outside of the high level awards, just because last year I don't feel like we didn't have enough to talk about with the midseason last year. It was like, okay, it felt pretty clear the 15 were, and I think this new positionless rule, I think it's just going to make things more interesting. So, all-star starters, because I do think there's a conversation to be had. Those are officially live now, so
Yes.
I'd love to know
Yeah.
what I'm sure we'll get to that. All rookie first team is always interesting just to see who the best 5 rookies are in our opinion. And then I throw in these fun categories: biggest surprise team, biggest disappointing team. We're going to call it the Adrian Griffin Award. I'm still workshopping a name. I don't think that's right because he was fired, and I think we called it the Steven Silas Award last year. Should have been
Right.
fired last month award. I don't know if Adrian Griffin should have been fired because it sounds like Doc Rivers is quoted to saying it's kind of a mess. We'll see what happens. And then I like this one because I think it's dumb. One player you could have on your team. No trade. They just magically appeared on your team, and there was no repercussion for the team that they came for. I think there's some interesting answers there. And then I have a question for you that you don't know about on purpose, and then we'll obviously end it every podcast from now on. Finals teams and winner. So, all right,
Perfect.
housekeeping's out of the way. MVP is what people are going to click on this, and then obviously in the next 3 to 8 minutes, my viewer retention will drastically fall off a cliff because that's just how this works. So, do you? I don't even know how to ask this. Do you have your favorite team's best player, as you probably should, for MVP?
Yeah, I have that Shea Gilgeous-Alexander guy. I wore the Thunder shirt just to remove any doubt of my objectivity. I really did put honest effort towards doing that, but I can't.
Me too,
promise
by the way.
results.
Let me just
So,
be completely
I mean,
transparent. Let me just be complete. So did I. I have the same answer, and like I just want to hear your reasoning because we're probably not going to be far off, and I feel like that's not doing the MVP a disservice. But when you really do the research and think about it, he's kind of the right answer.
I mean,
Anyway, sorry.
I'll tell you who no one should vote for. And that's Joel Embiid. We can get that out of the way. No one should vote for Joel Embiid. Now, I think, again, a bridesmaid, it's going to be crazy looking back to see his statistical profile and just wonder how he didn't win it every year. But Nikola Jokic, I think, is the firm second place guy right now, in my eyes. So I think it's got to be Shea. I mean, this team led by this guard who was an afterthought in a trade of an all NBA guy at that time in Paul George has in less than a presidential term transformed this team into a legit contender as they battle Minnesota for the 1 seed coming up on All-Star weekend. So we may get Mark Daigneault coaching the All-Star game, which if you told me that 2 months ago, I would not have believed you. So I just think he has led this team. The clutch stats are there. The shooting splits in the paint are insane. The way he gets to the cup, and when he does miss, he gets fouled a lot. And I get the free throw complaints. And if that wasn't a part of every elite guard's game, I would maybe see it a little bit there. But I mean, if you turn on and watch Luka Doncic, Steph Curry, Shea, they're going to be shooting a lot of free throws because they have the ball a lot. They're going to try and create shots, and people are going to do whatever they can to stop them. And a lot of times that means fouling them. But I mean, as far as this Thunder team, I know where they are in the standings. I know what month it is. I'm aware these things can ebb and flow. And do I think the Thunder finishes 1 seed? No. But I think they host a playoff series. And I think that alone, you remove Shea from that equation. I know Chet's been amazing. J-Dub as well in his sophomore year. But I truly think Shea is the driving force behind, honestly, the best story in the NBA, the most improved team in the NBA. This was a play-in team, a 500 team. I think they were 40 and 42 last year, or 42 and 40, one of those two. And now to sit here with 32 wins before the All-Star break, it's been incredible. And I think that, there's a lot of different reasons, a lot of different narratives. MVP goes a certain place. But I think if we're going to use the MVP to kind of like mark a spot in the history of the league, I think that it needs to be marked in Oklahoma City this year with Shea.
Yeah, look, I'm not saying coming into the year I was Bill Simmons and I was like, his case was just like all
that terrified me, by the way.
And it's working. And the only reason I say that is because like when you really think about it, there's no like argument. I'm trying to sit here and like articulate this thought because I want it to make sense. I sat down and I tried to come up with every legitimate, honest reason, knowing probably where you would go with it, to be fair. And I was like, I don't really like the argument is, well, he was doing this last year and they added Chet. We'll get to that because I have some stuff later that's more compelling for a different argument. But he leads the NBA in total points, which I know isn't like, this otherworldly statistic, right? But he leads the NBA in free throws. You already said, alluded to that. And then if you organize right now, by the way, the MVP tracker on Basketball Reference, which has been pretty good in history, 36 points per game for Joel Embiid. He has a 36.2% probability, which when you think about that, that's kind of nuts that those are close in number. But when you organize it by free throw attempts per game, Shea's fourth. So, like, that alludes to your free throw point, right? I'm trying to figure out this long-winded example. I guess my point would be to not argue in a circle with the same point is Jokic leads in win shares with 9.9, so I agree he should be second. They're fourth in the West, right? All the nerd stats are in favor of Jokic. Box plus minus record.
I'm
literally
not that.
every one of them. And it's like, okay,
Right.
fine. Embiid leads the NBA in points per game, as I said. And you can't use the games missed equation for him. But, like, if you're a fan and you're sitting here thinking, like, I'm not even arguing MVP anymore. I'm just, like, stating fact at this point. Your argument for Shea is going to be, well, I know we're not projecting to the future, but, like, let's just be real for a second. Embiid misses 5 more games. Shea's probably the MVP.
That's it. Yeah.
That's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Third in the East. So, honestly, right now, people are going to be mad one way or the other. Embiid's first in usage, 39% usage for a center is kind of ridiculous. So I was like, you know what? I don't really have an argument. So I think Shea, and I would go with what I've watched enough of, and I think Shea's the MVP. Again, I just went in a circle for a minute, but it's just to make sure people understand that they can be mad at this all they want. At the end of the year, it's different, but it's honestly really clear who the MVP is, and I think that's kind of crazy.
Right.
And I knew
45 games in. Yeah.
Right. And I knew this was going to happen, which is why I tried to have a fair discussion about it, but it's also deserving. So anything else on MVP? Because I really knew we weren't going to spend much time on it. Like, it's just
I think there's going to have to be a hell of a narrative pumped through back channels of the NBA for Embiid to reinsert himself in this conversation in a serious manner, just because he has not played in Denver since Barack Obama was president of this country. That's insane. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, that's right.
2019.
Yeah.
He sat last night. They sat him again tonight to kind of cover their tracks. He popped up on the injury report within 20 minutes of tip off. You were in your seat to watch that game before he even popped up on the injury report. I don't know what it is. I don't know if they play him in Philly. I don't get it. If you're going to duck him, duck him. But the optics of that and the recency to when we hopped on and did this, I think for me, weighed heavily because the MVP is pretty narrative driven. And if that's a ding on you now, and God forbid he does it again against Milwaukee or somebody else, I think that's only going to catch more steam. Like you said, he's 5 games away from being ineligible, which may lead them to scrap that rule after a year. Who knows? We'll see what kind of star power he really has as far as the league and ratings go. But he's having a hell of a season. He's the reason Philly is third in the East, even with Maxi's improved play. And but I don't think he's in line to repeat as MVP right now.
I value winning, as you know, and as you'll see throughout this podcast. So I'll leave it at that, and we'll get to another category. Who do you have for Defensive Player of the Year? This is the award I completely struggle with, like I said.
Yeah, I struggled because the effect this guy has had, especially defensively, since he changed teams midseason, has been incredible. I think the easy answer, the kind of cop-out-ish answer, is Rudy Gobert. I mean, he's been a defensive stalwart in this league in the regular season for a very, very long time. I just think that, I get the respect he's given. I get the fact that he's the betting favorite at the moment. I get that Minnesota is, I think, as we sit here right now on the 29th at 9:30, they're tied for the 1 seed in the West. They're playing incredibly well, and he's a big part of that. But something about this Knicks team with OG Anunoby on it, they're 12-2 since he jumped on that squad. And his defensive metrics, the defensive win shares are pretty close. Gobert does lead him in that, so that's why I give Gobert the nod. But I think, like you alluded to, winning matters. And this Knicks team, has just started to go on a tear. But, I can't project out past tonight, obviously. But I think that may be something that has a long life. And I think that if OG is driving force behind that, especially with defensive play, and if Tibbs would play him 48 minutes a night if he could. So I think that, this may be a case of it'll be one of these two, but we may need more from OG to unseat a guy with the priors and the past awards that Gobert has, especially with this award. So I went Gobert, but I've been very intrigued by the momentum behind OG the last 2-3 weeks.
I should have gave OG a longer look, and I knew it. So you had me in the first half. I was sitting here. I'm like taking notes because I couldn't get my notes to print. So I'm like writing down what I'm gonna say, and I'm like, is he going Rudy? Is he going OG? Like, I'm lost. I'm like, I think I understand both. Here, look, this award's a cluster, and it always is whenever there's not a clear cut Draymond, Rudy, etc. Right? And I
Right.
don't think it's clear cut. I really don't. I like the Gobert thought there. I'm gonna lay out a case, and then I'm gonna tell you why I didn't go with it. The Wemby argument coming into the year, right? Leads the league in blocks, or will, right?
Hmm.
Which he does. Second in block percentage. I think that's really important for when you only play 28 minutes, 24,
Right.
26, somewhere. Like when you play that little minutes for a star and you are second in the league in block percentage. Walker Kessler's first, by the way. Um, and you're affecting the game in such a unique way with length, that's less athleticism. It has to be at least taken into consideration, right? His team's 25th in defense. That immediately
Yeah.
kills any argument that I think people are going to make.
Yeah.
Preseason, now, I don't care, right? I don't think you're going to believe me. But right now I have Chet as the defensive player of the year. And
I mean,
I'm even,
there is a case. I
here
agree
it
with you.
is. I'm going to tell you. It is. This is it. Thunder are 4th in defensive rating, 13th
Yes.
last year. 13th in scoring defense, which still feels a little low with Shea being so good this year defensively. 19th last year. Still not a great rebounding team. However, defensive rebounding, I don't think people realize is considered as a defensive stat. 28th in defensive rebounding percentage, which is a thing you have to look at for the big minutes and how valuable those can be or unvaluable those can be when Chet's off the floor. 28th in rebound percentage, 47.6%. Chet can't fix that problem entirely himself, obviously. And then they hold the opponents to the lowest field goal percentage per game, 44.7%. You're winning a playoff series when you hold your opponents to 44% from the field. And then first in forced turnovers and third in block percentage as a team. There are things you can tell me about Walker Kessler. There are things you can tell me about Rudy Gobert. There are things you can tell me about certain teams and why certain guys might be in the running there. But everything I just laid out, if you look at year over year, defensive impact, what is and what isn't based on a player being there, and then just the stats to back it up, just the raw numbers, I don't know how he isn't. And obviously I understand that that's fallacy to think that there aren't other guys in the running, but just everything that I did research-wise for this guy stuck out, and I still struggle with the answer. So I'm going with Chet, and I knew that would probably put a big smile on your face. So
Yeah, I mean, I think if you showed the TNT guys blind resumes defensively, and you threw Chet up there with a Rudy or another big that's in the running, AD's always going to be there. Bam, maybe, and Embiid if he can play enough games. They probably don't guess that right, just based on the statistical profile individually, and then the team improvement, like you mentioned. The rebounding is still an issue, one I hope that our Lord and Savior Sam Presti will address in the coming weeks. But I think that just as a defensive unit, I mean, Lou Dort is there. Kassan Wallace was brought in as a rookie to kind of fix that off the bench. Shea, very active hands. He's getting into passing lanes. He's stealing balls, things like that. So, I mean, I think he's the big, kind of like Shea for MVP. He's the driving force behind a marked improvement team defense-wise by the Thunder. And they've had Lou Dort. They've had defensive guys before. And then you add Chet and they take another leap. And I think that, him being identified as the person responsible for that, or at least getting the most credit, lays out a pretty compelling case. I think he'll be a finalist. I'd be shocked if he wasn't a finalist. I think he falls in that top three. I would probably put him third behind those two for now, as this 45 game cutoff has us here. But I mean, yeah, Wemby could definitely creep into that finalist conversation. The minutes thing and having 10 wins right now thing may prove to be stumbling blocks. The team defense, bottom 5 in the NBA, like you mentioned, that's not great. So if they can maybe separate that, look past that, and just focus on an individual, I think that may help him. I just don't see enough voters doing that to where he really becomes a compelling candidate. But I'm all for more Thunder Award winners. I will not hesitate to support that.
Look, and people aren't going to understand who are new here. They're not going to understand that I'm not the fan here. Like I try to be honest with this stuff, and I appreciate your honesty when it comes to these voting decisions because Rudy, I think, isn't a bad choice. I considered AD. He was actually who I wrote down originally. And as much as stats aren't the everything, there wasn't a lot of stats that like backed him up consistently. I do think when you watch though, like I've texted you this before, we've talked about it before on here. When he is playing in the right position and and engaged. So think like any playoff series he's been in the last 3 years. He's the best defensive player in the world. Like when he is completely locked in, and it just like I can't explain it enough. Where like when he is actually engaged and in the place he's supposed to be, basically not playing center, he's one of
Right.
the best
Yeah.
defenders in the world. It just everything being able to switch. Even now, he's getting into his 30s soon, or it just now getting to his 30s. Like being able to still switch onto guards, obviously having the foot speed for that, having the defensive ability to just reach out. It's not Wemby level where you can like block anything, but he's an
Yeah.
incredible defender, and I think he doesn't get enough credit all time. I think it'll obviously age better. All
Right.
right, Rookie of the year. This is the part where we were talking before we started. There may be some. This is where I wouldn't care either way where you went, probably based on
Yeah.
your fandom. But at the same time, it's like I don't think there's a bad answer for one of these two guys. I went with
No.
Victor
No.
ultimately just because I think I've seen enough. I mean, offensively, the last 18 games has been incredible, and obviously,
Mhm.
playing 26 minutes I think helps that. Again, I told you winning is valuable to me, but I laid out enough of a case that I would rather give Chet a Defensive Player of the Year because I think that's where he's been the most valuable. I know that doesn't speak for what's the criteria for Rookie of the Year, but I think there's obviously some of it has to be media driven, some of it has to be narrative driven, and what's best for my thought process and what's best for the league, it's probably Victor winning it, and I would just give it to him because offensively he's been incredible.
Yeah. I mean, the theory behind if Chet takes home Defensive Player of the Year, then you kind of not defer to win because he's absolutely capable of winning this award. And if you excluded the second year, first season guys, it would be Wimby minus 10,000 everywhere you looked, as it should be. So I mean, like you said, there's no wrong answer. I think the better answer right now, because the minute ramp up has not happened to a massive extent yet, because the team is so terrible around him. I would lean Chet. Obviously, I can't roll off of the Defensive Player of the Year thing just because I didn't have him. But I think that if it does shake out that way, Chet gets the defensive nod and Wemby gets the rookie nod. That's an exceptional way, I think, to mark both of these incredible seasons, their first seasons playing. Wemby's been incredible of late. Like you mentioned, he's getting a lot of momentum. It's not translating to the win column. But when you go first overall, you're going to a place with problems. It's not like, you're not getting lucky like Cleveland and there's no frozen envelopes, anything like that. Like you're going to go to a dysfunctional franchise. They're going to have problems. You're not going to figure it out year one. Except for in very rare cases, like the last big guy that the Spurs draft number one overall. But um, I went Chet just because, like I mentioned, I didn't have him Defensive Player of the Year. The counting stats all favor Wemby. I just think that to this point, right now, I don't think he's fully been unleashed. And I think that version of him that we may see in the next 30, 35 games would absolutely, I think, pass Chet up. And of course, the Thunder may start to focus on other things beyond the 82nd game, whereas the Spurs do not have to do that. So if there was any kind of push within the organization to get Wemby more involved just for the purpose of that, not that he needs that to, designate he had a great rookie season, but I think, like you said, the league will want to earmark that for him. And fair or not, I think he deserves it. This is 1A, and I don't even think 1B is the right word. They're that close. They're that excellent individually. I mean, maybe the wins thing comes into play. Kind of like you can kind of almost borrow from the Defensive Player of the Year case for Chet and roll that into Rookie of the Year. Who impacted their team better positively? It's clearly been Chet to this point. Um, and we can match up second half records. Maybe it's closer, which I think will need to happen if Wimby gets it. But I don't think you can blame Wimby for trying desperately to drag the rest of his team up the standings. And at this point, I don't think that's a goal of the organization anyway. So I don't know what they're going to do with his minutes down the stretch. And if they choose to dial them back in this stretch run, I think that's going to ultimately lose him the award, which I wouldn't want because I want both these guys full run, full go the whole season. But obviously, both of these franchises, for different reasons, are going to be focused on the future after about 55, 60 games. But right now, I would say Chet.
I think it's all easy case to make for either guy. Like that's the issue, and I think the point you make about rolling over Defensive Player of the Year numbers, like that's why I gave it a check because some of them were just so eye opening that I'm not going to argue with somebody that for or against somebody that I can't sit here and be like one of them's been better than the other. They've both been incredible, and the victor people are going to be like, well, whatever, like he wants to win, sure, right, but
Right.
at the end of the day, like that's not the way Rookie of the Year can be valued. And I just ultimately, offensively, what the league wants, what I've seen enough of, I had to be fair and give it to him. The problem is, if one of these guys wins Defensive Player of the Year, are they really going to give Rookie or the other guy? They're probably not, right? Like, so if they win
That's
one,
fair. Yeah.
they're probably going to win both. So again, we're arguing for and against things that don't even technically matter right now. It's what we think at the midseason award. I just want to be honest when we have these conversations and we say, well, why'd you vote for that guy? And sometimes I can go, I don't really know. And that's okay. Because guess what? There are voters in the AP poll every single week that don't know what they're doing in the damnedest. And they get paid a lot more money than I do to talk about basketball. And I think it's ridiculous. So guess what? If I can just tell you, I think it's Victor because he's been incredible. I don't really feel bad about it. So
that's not a bad case either. I mean, it could be that succinct,
right.
honestly, and be right. So yeah.
That's why I hate these awards sometimes, but that's why I like this show because we're allowed to talk about it and be like,
right.
Sometimes it doesn't make sense. And you know what? I'm going to give it to Chet for Defensive Player of the Year because he deserves it. And I'm going to give it to Victor for Rookie of the Year because he deserves it also for two different reasons. I would like to spend no more than 2 minutes on Sixth Man of the Year. I'm just going to put that out there because we're at 24 minutes, and I think the stuff after is more interesting. Let me tell you why it's not Tim Hardaway Jr. I'll just start with that because he's the best favorite basically everywhere. I don't pull it up. I don't have it in front of me. Don't really care. And why it's not Benedict Mathurin as much as Pacers fans would like to think it is. I do think he's really good, but I'll tell you why. Benedict Mathurin started 14 games. Done. Killed the case. Sorry. 32 games
good.
off the bench, 14 starts. Like, that's just not enough. Like, you just got to be a guy that when I think bench player, I immediately am like, all right, I see it, right? Lou Will, et cetera. It doesn't have to be said. Tim Hardaway Jr., Mavs are 8th in the West, 35 games off the bench, 8 starts, so it's still in the realm of possibility there. Most points per game off the bench. The Mavs stink. So I can't give it to a guy who's the best player off of a team that they can't figure out a lineup continuity with. We've already talked about it. So I guess the answer is, do you not have Malik Monk or Naz Reid?
I have Malik Monk, who has 0 starts. So that was my first criteria to go look up.
Me too. And so I went with Malik Monk. I think a lot closer than I think people realize. Naz Reid, just his case quickly. The T-Wolves are second in the West, 46 games off the bench, so he's played 3 more games than Malik Monk. Still 0 starts. 12. The stats don't jump off the page. 12.5 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, 1 assist, 49, 40, 78 splits. So shoots the ball incredibly well as a big.
That's impactful, yeah.
So I can understand the winning aspect of it, right? But I think the T-Wolves winning and the formula for why it's so successful this year, A, I'm still trying to figure it out, and B, I think I do think right now it's a grouping of a lot of things, right? I think it's Rudy taking a step up, like you said, defensively, or being back to that level. Ant being an all-NBA caliber guy we'll get to in a minute. I went with Malik Monk because when I think bench player and I think impactful, he basically leads their second unit as a point guard. He is averaging 5.5 assists per game. That doesn't sound like it sounds like a lot, and then you really think about where we are in the current NBA. Guys are averaging 12, right? Some of the best players, but for your best scoring bench option, who you think of as a bench scoring option, is averaging almost 6 assists per game, even with the inflated offensive numbers of the league today. That's somebody that I completely rely on as a second unit person, which has to be considered into that offense or into that consideration for an offensive award. So, Sixth Man of the Year, I went Malik Monk because I just laid out the case for you. Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Kings sit the top of that second tier in the West, but I think that I think the formula includes more Malik Monk than it does Naz Reid when you look at teams and success and things like that. The stats, as 6 men are not going to be anything eye-opening, but as far as on-court impact, things like that, I think this could be another coin flip one. I mean, we only have half the data here as far as what they're going to vote on, so it could be neither one of these guys. Who knows? But I'm with you to this point on Malik Monk.
I don't want to hear the Bogdanovich case. The Pistons have won 4 games. Don't care. Not happening. All right. I know we talked about having ors on our list, and this is my most glaring or was most improved player because here we are once again where we land ourselves, whether it's preseason, current season, or middle of the season, whatever, end of season, where we go, should we figure out a way to prevent guys that are already incredible from winning this award? Weird. Yeah. So here's the problem. I don't think there's a guy like that yet. I think that there will be a case eventually for somebody later in the year. I'm between 2 guys that I think were already good. For guys that watch the league, they understand that they were already good. and they just got astronomically better for their team's impact. And I have two guys, and I'd love to know who you have as. Do you have an or in this? Like, do you have two options here? Or was this one of the other awards, or do you have a solid answer?
I mean, there's I think a worthy or there's kind of a sleeper as well. I think has come on and a team that isn't making a lot of noise, so he may not be either. I've got Maxey at the top of this. I know he was already a pretty damn good player before that, but the loss of James Harden, his increase in minutes, his role with the Embiid, to put it lightly, nonsense. He has kind of led them through those dark nights where they don't know if their franchise player is going to play or not. Efficiency is down a bit, but with the step up and roll and just the importance of his presence, I think he's done really, really well. The Sixers are in the thick of it in the regular season, like they always are. Now, if you check back in round two of the playoffs, you're probably not watching the Sixers again. But I mean, I think this is a good accolade to kind of again just bookmark a jump and play. 20 points to 25. That's a pretty big milestone as far as the NBA goes, and doing it over the course of at least this far half an NBA season. So I had Maxey as mine. I could hear a Kobe White argument. He's really come on for Chicago. Obviously, the Bill Simmons pick is going to be Şengün. So I mean, that's you got to take that in consideration too. There's a Thunder guy I don't think is going to get serious consideration. I'd love for him to be a finalist in Jalen Williams just because of how incredible he is, especially lately in crunch time. But yeah, I went with Maxey on this one.
I don't give the award to second year players. I just never have, and it's nothing. It's
That's
no
yeah,
slight. It's no slight to second year players. It's just
no,
I don't think unless a guy goes like because Derrick Rose his thing was second year to third year right to win MVP. I believe if I'm right, but I think there's no amount of value of a guy where there would be a case they went from their rookie year to their second year where there was a reason for them to be most improved player unless they like helped them win a championship. I just don't see that
right.
being as valuable. I'm gonna give you Tyrese Maxey because I wrote down two and said whichever I told you before we started. I said whichever you say, I'm going with.
Mm.
My other or was Şengün because I think he's been incredible. Like
He really has, yeah.
to go from being the guy that would, and I went to a game last year in April, in Houston against the Lakers, against a team where he would obviously have, probably have struggled against a player like Anthony Davis. But still, it's the exact same thing you think of, right? And the Lakers were like 30. And the Rockets would play this typical offense where Jalen Green or Kevin Porter Jr. at the time, right, who's obviously not in the league right now, but whoever had the ball, whoever crossed half court, was the guy that was going to shoot, right? And that was how they were going to figure it out, or they were going to get their minutes. We all know the old exhausted Rockets last year, right? What he's done now I'm not comparing him to Jokic, but just as a creator, as a guy that's comfortable in the post, as a guy that doesn't take crap from people now. I mean, I'm assuming Ime Udoka plays into that a little bit, right? Where Jalen Green, it's no longer his team, right? It's now Şengün's team. Taking that step up statistically, all of that stuff aside, right? I went with Maxey partly because you did, but also guys speak so highly of him just at every level. Players, Doc's been very vocal about him being just this incredible guy that people are going to, undervalue for a really long time. To go, have a career average of 17 points per game, obviously, alludes to what he's been before coming up to now. I do look at that sometimes, especially for a guy that's younger in their career. I look at not just a year over year, right? If you go from 10 points per game to 26 points per game, you probably deserve it anyway. But he went from, middle teens to 25, right? So it's 6.5 assists per game. His shooting splits have been pretty good. So I'm going to give it to him because of the winning impact he's made. And, having to carry that team, like you said, when Embiid is ducking Jokic and things like that. Like, all jokes aside, he's been incredible. And I have to take really strong thought into just how strongly people talk about him, and I think that speaks volumes to what he's done and how hard he's worked to be there. So long-winded, but I think Tyrese Maxey wins the award, and I think he probably does at the end of the year too, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I mean, I hate it for Şengün, but I think the dysfunction in Houston may be playing a role in it. Obviously, he's shown through that brightly, increasingly so, especially this year. Because I think he had this in him last year. It was just kind of just wading through all of the garbage on and off the court going on in Houston. I think that Ime Udoka, his behavior aside, is a better coaching presence for him. I mean, they're battling for the play-in right now, but when you consider where this team was this time last year, I mean, I know they added Dylan Brooks and Van Vliet, but I think he's just as responsible for this. I think it is a jump from Houston from the cellar to battling for a play-in spot as we sit here. I think he's just as integral to that as the free agent addition. So I really have no qualms about a Şengün vote either.
Without even jumping into like his, super detailed advanced stats and usage percentage, just from points per game alone, 14 to 21. I'm rounding, obviously, there. Rebounds didn't really go up at all. 1.5 or almost 1.2 assists higher, 1.2 steals instead of less than a steal. Blocks stayed the same. Turnovers stayed the same. 2.6 turnovers. So higher usage, higher volume, assumptively, and turnovers stay the same. So he's controlling the ball better. You can tell he's learning from some of those mistakes. Shooting splits, obviously for them to be 55% last year from the field to now 54% on 5 more shot attempts, like that just has to speak volumes to the kind of improvement. I do think he deserves at least this conversation, though, like you said. I think that's a great way to put it. All right, let's keep rolling because we got a couple of fun ones to get to. We're almost done with the typical ballot awards, I think we would call them.
Right.
Coach of the Year. This is probably where we would agree again. Well, I've already laid out my case why it's, why your favorite team has an MVP and a Defensive Player of the Year. So why not let's complete the Triple Crown and give the number one, like you said, coach that's probably going to coach in the All-Star game as of right now, or it's going to be between him and Saunders
Finch.
or whoever the heck is Finch. Thank you. Good grief. I don't even know who's coaching the Timberwolves. Isn't that bad? Yeah, let's cut that out. All right. Anyway, Coach of the Year, Mark Daigneault.
I mean, yeah, I don't know how. I mean, even like the wins resume, they've beaten Boston, they've won in Denver twice in December. I just think that, and honestly, when they hired him, I'm like thinking, who the hell is this? But I went and looked. Oklahoma City Blue coach. He had a pretty good track record before this. Guys speak very, very highly of him. That's just now that people are asking more. Now that we actually, as a national, I guess, organization, have actually looked and seen like, okay, this Thunder coach that nobody on the street can pick out of a lineup. Like, who is this guy? How did he get here? Things like that. And it's been all glowing reports from past players, fellow coworkers, things like that. It's been incredible to see. I mean, who else but the Thunder to hire a guy from just the absolute limelight of the G League, and he turns into just an absolute machine. Has guided the second youngest team in the NBA to their fight with Minnesota right now for his right to coach in the All-Star game, like you mentioned. They're up 2 with 11 minutes left. That's probably going to decide it, honestly. The top 4 in the West are within like a game and a half, so it's been incredible to kind of see them flip-flop as we get towards that cutoff for the All-Star game and who coaches that. So for his sake, I hope the team can come together and get him that. They lost to Detroit yesterday, which no one saw or cared about because there's football on, thank God. But I hope that does not cost him the opportunity to coach in the All-Star game. I think he deserves that exposure, that praise, the attention, all of which he probably hates. But as a fan, I think his hard work and largely silence has gone too unnoticed nationally. And I just think that he's been an incredible mentor, a teacher, and a leader of, again, the second youngest team in the NBA. I don't think anybody's over the age of like 26. It's incredible. These are not teams that usually sit in the top half of the standings, let alone the top of the standings, especially out in the West, which is largely perceived as a better conference. So I don't think this is the one I'm most confident as far as like my bias isn't really biased at this point, just because he's been that good. So I'll take Daigneault for Coach of the Year.
He's an incredible coach, like just X's and O's and just things that people are just going to look at and be like, well, it's all this youth and it's all these guys being talented, but like he's an incredible coach. And so I'm going to ask you a trivia question. You said you looked into him a little bit. It's not just the blue that has influenced his strong coaching history. Obviously, this is a more prevalent thing in college, the coaching trees and such. What national champion coach that may or may not have coached in the NBA, what coaching tree do you think he came from? Do you know?
It was Donovan, wasn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Also, it was under Ralph Willard at Holy Cross, another underrated name in college basketball. He had a 62% winning percentage at Holy Cross. Just a random fun, factoid there. Obviously, Donovan, 71% winning percentage at Florida, and he was under him at Florida from 2010 to 2014. He was with the Blue for, 6 years after that, in and out as an assistant, but basically floated between the Blue and the Thunder's bench, quote unquote. I guess they technically did that for a while there. A lot of benches started doing that where they sent guys up and down as well. Look, incredible coach. I've made that clear, and I think he deserves it. I just thought it was an interesting factoid that he came from the Billy Donovan coaching tree, and it wasn't through Oklahoma City, which I thought was funny.
No.
It was somehow through the annals of Gainesville. Yeah, couldn't pick him out of a crowd though. Love that comment. All right, Clutch Player of the Year award. I know we probably disagree on this. You sent me a screenshot of a certain particular player who shoots 72% in the clutch. When you look more into that number, I think there are better cases, which is why I'm curious who you have. So who do you have for Clutch Player of the Year or the Jerry West Award? Sorry, Mr. West.
Yeah. I was between Dame or LeBron James, and the fact that LeBron is doing this, the numbers in the clutch in year 20,000, whatever it is, I'm going to give him the nod, not because as a true Thunder fan, I hate Damian Lillard. I think Lillard's been exceptional in the clutch. I can't dispute it. The numbers speak for themselves. The fact that we have clutch stats is amazing. I love it. Like you said, this award may be only to get that out there. And if that's the case, then fine. I don't consider it a meme award. I think it's good.
Yeah.
It's eye-opening. It needs to happen. If we were going to make an award for a stat, this is the one to do it for. And I think just because of my just general awe for LeBron James, what he's doing at the age he's doing, he's coming off 36, 20, and 12 the other night. I don't care how much that was in the clutch. That's insane. So I'm giving a nod to the GOAT. Damian Lillard has been exceptional in the clutch. He's been that way his whole career, to the detriment of my Thunder in that shot that I've seen 10,000 times. But yeah, halfway point. I think there's an argument for Shea as well. Jalen Williams has recently come on a lot in the clutch, so I think he may be taking away from Shea a bit. Not that Jalen Williams is going to vault into the contender portion of this, but just lately he has been a guy that has performed excellently well in the clutch, not because Shea can't, just because he's another horse to have down the court you can trust with the ball in his hands when crunch time. And a game, we'll probably see that again here tonight in about 40 minutes. But as far as 45 games in, I'm going to give the nod to LeBron.
I don't care who the answer is for this right now, because ultimately this needs data to back it up. So LeBron's not a bad shout. The numbers do say, like you said, though, the numbers say it's Damian Lillard. 18-5. I'll be quick. 18-5 record in the clutch, 23 games played, 4.3 points per game. Third in that category of guys who have played 15 games or more. So I tried to you really have to play with the numbers thing. Like you really have to filter through the crap. That's why I don't like the lineups tool, because it's really, really clunky and unuser friendly. I wish another place would mess with the lineup tool and let me type in what I want, right? I know there's probably sites out there. People can let me know in the comments. Fifth in points per game in the clutch if you don't have a game played minimum. 46, 34, 95 really stuck out to me from the line. Splits there for Damian Lillard in the clutch. And those just you have to be able to make your shots, whether it's from the line or not. 0.2 turnovers and 3.1 plus minus, which with enough games played, that does actually, doesn't look like an inflated number. You can't take the Buck stuff. Really, this award sucks because it's literally a stat award, right? You can watch games all you want.
That's the thing. Yeah.
Our friends at Google think that these stats have been a thing since 2000. Maybe I missed that, but all the James Harden arguments about the clutch, I just would love to have somebody break out a 100-page novel on just how maybe he wasn't as bad of a clutch player. I have no idea. I just think it'd be really funny. Maybe that's something to look into in the offseason. I went with Dame. I don't really care either way. So, all right, let's get into what I thought was the most fun putting these together. All NBA teams, and then we'll roll through All-Star starters, Rookie of the Year. We'll get to some other stuff, and we'll get out of here. So, All NBA teams. Obviously, the caveat is games played doesn't really matter because it's midseason, but a lot of these guys will not be on the All NBA team because of games played, more than likely. And then, of course, there is technically a positionless aspect now, right? We do not have to have if 5 point guards are the 5 best players in the league. We can technically do that now. I hated it last year. I told you that. We talked about it on the podcast when it happened. I kind of like it now. And I'll tell you what, third team got really funky. I think that's why. So, first team, I'll just get mine out of the way. I went with Shea, Luka, Giannis, Tatum, Jokic. Any disagreements?
Yeah, we're in lockstep there.
Really? Wow.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. The argument people are going to be is why don't you just have Embiid and Jokic together? I'm well.
Because Embiid is scared of Jokic. That's why. So I don't want him to be fearful, so I'll put them on separate teams. That's why.
Well, look, and Tatum, best player on the best team in the East, right? Taking
which
another
deserves
consistent.
A nod.
It does deserve to step up. Giannis has been incredible, even to his standards, right? The fact that he's not even what feels like in the MVP conversation is almost a
which
travesty.
is
So
crazy. Yeah,
this feels like a participation trophy almost for a first team
right.
All NBA. Luka, I don't care that they're eighth. I just don't like.
There's just not words to describe. He's came off 73 points. There,
I
end of
don't. Yeah,
argument. Whatever. Yeah,
I wrote this before. I even like. Oh, and I was like, oh yeah, he did score 73 the other night. That's probably okay. I'm gonna put that down.
yeah, that'll work.
And then Shea, we talked about it for 20 minutes at the top. So
Come on now. Yeah.
second team, I think it gets interesting. I'll just do the same thing. I'll lay it out and see how many disagreements we have. I have Halliburton, Brunson, LeBron, Davis, Embiid.
Okay, so I did the same thing. I didn't know if you'd bump Curry off the second team too, but I did as well. We're in lockstep at guard. I've got Brunson, who we'll mention later with a disagreement we had with the national media.
I know exactly where we're going with this.
Yeah,
this is so bad.
It should not be Dame time in a couple weeks. But
oh god,
yeah, Halliburton, incredible again, buried by the. Average feels mean. A team not on national headlines every night.
Sorry, Alex Golden, who was literally on this podcast like 3 days
ago. They're clear of the play-in, so they're a good team in my eyes. I think they are truly a good team. We've mentioned Mathen already. Miles Turner has finally exited the trade machine, so I think they're rolling. They got Siakam now, which I forgot about until I started thinking about their roster just now. So who knows how that's going to play out over the second half. But to this point, I think Halliburton's absolutely worthy of a nod. So yeah, Halliburton, Brunson.
I felt bad leaving. To be clear, I felt bad leaving him off the first team. Like I really did. Like I felt kind of bad.
Yeah.
But then I'm like
who the hell you can take off? It's
Luka's Luka's the only argument, and that feels dumb. So I'm like,
if we got a sixth man on the first team, it would probably be him. I wouldn't take Embiid.
Perfect way to put that.
Yeah, I went Durant. It's one of those things where it felt just crazy, and I have every right in the world to put him eighth team, but it just feels like it's going under the radar almost, not to the extent of 100%. Tatum because the Celtics are actually good, but I think that triumvirate has not put together a consistent resume together, unfortunately, and I think this isn't even projecting. I think he would be deserving right now, but I think the steam will pick up behind his campaign for second team as that team gets clicking, gets rolling, gets healthy, all these things. Booker, obviously, I'll mention in a second, but I just think that I have too much belief in Durant as a player, however soft on the inside he may be, to not be in these teams, and to have him third team just looked insane to me because I had him third. I started, and then I flipped him in AD 10 minutes before we got on here. So, I mean, it was really, really tough for me. But it just it felt right. I don't really know how else to say it.
So make sure I got it right. Halliburton, Brunson, and then give me the front court again.
It was LeBron, Durant, Embiid.
Okay. All right. So basically, we basically have them flipped. Look, the Durant thing's so interesting. I don't want to spend forever on it, but like when you mentioned, like it feels like when you look at third team, you go, it kind of feels wrong, and then I'm like, when I was putting these lists together of every award, I went, have I like forgotten Kevin Durant's played a significant amount of games? Like, but he's been the consistent guy. Like, it's kind of one of those things.
That's the thing. Yeah.
They have so much going on that I just kind of forgot that he's kind of been playing this level, which is, I don't say that from like do I not watch enough Suns games? Sometimes you have these guys where you're like, huh, yeah, I guess he has played like he's supposed to, and like he's had good stats, and the team's not bad, right? They're fine right now. I don't know. Yeah. I just don't feel like it's this season that like I'm not rewarding a guy. Like LeBron, people can say like, do you feel like you're rewarding a guy for being a legend? And it's like, I kind of feel like I'm doing that a little bit with Durant.
Yeah.
Right. But like LeBron's playing deserving enough, right? Like I feel like with Giannis, you're kind of like, are you just always going to give him first team? It's like, he's kind of reached that point already. And it's like, yeah, I am, because he's been incredible. Right. Durant of those guys, I put him on the third team because I think the guys ahead of him have been better this year. And I don't want to think so far back for guys like that. I want people to understand my argument there is I can't reward guys. It's like Curry, right? Like, it's a perfect example, right? Yeah. He should probably be first or second team every year. Like, it just is what it is. And I have to just not think about the fact that he's a top 12 player all time. Like, I just have to forget that. Yeah. So my third team, I went with Steph, Dame, Booker, Edwards, and Durant. This is where it got really goofy because the center drop off I'm just kind
Yeah.
of got, for the sake of this team, right? Not having a DeAndre Jordan omission here. I think he was first team that year for God's
God,
sake. But
yeah.
the fact that this team won't have Yusuf Nurkic on it because he's the third best center in the league. Obviously, I'm disrespecting every other good center. I'm just being real for a second.
Not that
here.
much. Yeah.
I do love the fact that this is where I'm like, I cannot believe that we can just put anybody on the third team. You can do it with any other team, to be fair. But my point is I looked at this and I went, yeah, 3.5 guards looks pretty good. I say half a guard because Edwards is basically like, depending on the night, he's a small forward. So I went with Curry, Lillard, Booker, Edwards, Durant, and looking at it, saying it out loud for a second time, I feel icky on the inside as an NBA historian. I'm just going to leave it at that, and I'm curious where we had disagreements.
I had Curry, Booker, Kawhi, AD, and Ant.
Curry, Booker, we had the same. AD, I flipped it there. We already talked about that.
I had Kawhi instead of Dame. Kawhi and Ant, who we both had.
Oh, okay. Make the Kawhi
and Ant was last
then.
because I went through it, and I just think somebody on this Clippers team has to be somewhere because I think he's the reason they have surged. And this is the Clippers team. We all joke and laugh. They're going to lose the first round playoff series to the Mavs, and they're going to collapse. But I mean, they're 30-15 as we sit here, and I think he's been kind of like Durant. He's been the constant in the midst of all the stuff, where you kind of have to like sift through it and figure out how are they right here. They didn't start well, but they've been surging lately. They've won like 24 of 30 or something ridiculous like that. And with the cutoff that we have at the halfway point, they're the hottest team in the league. I think they've won 8 of 10. They're 19-4 at home, which puts them at the top of the league. So I just felt like I had to have some sort of representative from that there. And it felt right to have Kawhi there. But I mean, the Dame piece of it, I have no problem with at all. I think he's absolutely one of the top 15 players this year. It's just not how it quite shook out for me.
You were saying something about Edwards there. Was there a point that you wanted to make?
Thank God it's positionless because it felt wrong to not have him on there.
I know that
because the same thing. It's that team is so good, and he's been the reason on it. I mean, they have the two big guys, and I get that, but he's been incredible. And to have him not on here because we have to throw Nurkic on here is a travesty. So I'm glad we're free from that.
The Kawhi counter argument would be after they lost whatever it was 6 in a row when Harden got traded there, like which is an understandable thing when an All NBA type of player, top 75, whatever guy gets traded somewhere and has to figure out after what went on in Philly. The argument could be that they're playing that well because James Harden's been an unbelievable facilitator and second scorer, third scorer, whatever. Like, I'm not making that case. I'm just going to be clear. I'm not making that case.
No, that exists out there. I will acknowledge that. Absolutely.
Once they figured something out, that first 8 games, like they were horrible. Let me be upfront. They were horrible that first 8 games.
It did not look good. Yeah.
Like you said, they're like 24 and 30, or like 24 of the
30 and 15. Yeah. But they've been
it's just ridiculous.
Fire.
Only lost like 7 games. So So the argument would be Harden, but not for the team that we're talking about here. So basically, our only disagreement that I have in front of me is we flopped Kevin Durant and AD.
Yes.
And you had Kawhi over Dame, which I don't hate any of that. So this went a lot differently than I thought it would. And here we are 52 minutes in. We agreed with a lot more than I thought we would. So glad to have you back every year. I wrote down originally, now I'm kind of disagreeing with myself. I wrote down, I wish we could go back to positions, but I assume the game minimum will make these choices easier at the end of the season. That's probably
until we lose Embiid, then we're looking for 2 centers to throw in there. But I think that's other than that. Yeah,
counter argues my own point is like, oh well, then you won't have to worry about the center. You just pick
another. That's how we get all
Edwards.
NBA Şengün. That's how we do it. Yeah.
All right, all-star starters in the East. Let's just get it out of the way. Jalen Brunson should have been an all-star starter.
The correct 5 in the eyes of people who watch the ball bounce on the court occasionally. Halliburton, Brunson, Tatum, Giannis, Embiid. I don't. Right. I mean, come on. I get you gotta have people to watch this game, but like, come on. Like,
I do want to say this though. I do want to say this up front. I think the case is a lot closer than people are making it. I do like,
and I realize that it's And getting ready for this made me kind of realize that because my knee-jerk reaction was, "What the hell are they looking at? What is wrong?" I mean,
Dame's been incredible. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's the thing, and especially the clutch piece of it, which we've mentioned. I'm glad we got to that before this because you might think, "Well, Dame doesn't deserve it." It's not that he's undeserving. I think the Brunson's been that good. It's not a case of Dame shouldn't be. I think it's that Brunson should be a little more.
It's not even like a clutch whatever. Like I don't even care if those exist, right? Because Brunson's not like an incredible clutch player, right? At least not with it in front of me. But the problem I have with it is what's the criteria for the All-Star game? Like honestly, like what's the criteria for any of these awards? It's why we
I mean,
argued about late of the season stuff.
there's
We
a
sat here
fan
and
vote piece of this, which may have, I don't know what the fan vote totals were. The fan vote totals got Andrew Wiggins as a starter, so I don't really care about those after that. So I
right.
mean, it's
My point is like I just don't know if the argument is and obviously the way the voting works, like the media only votes for the starters, or I don't even
like
know.
a third. Yeah, it's
Right. So we like if we had a vote would only have a certain amount of power. But the point is what's the criteria? Like, what am I sitting here going? What's my argument for Brunson over Dame? Is it stats? Well, they're pretty close. Is it the Knicks are winning games, whatever? Well, they're only a spot behind the Bucks. Is it whatever?
yeah.
But I think for what it means, like either guy's probably deserving. I just think Brunson's been incredible. Like what I've seen
I
from
think so
Brunson
too.
has been just so consistent that I have to feel like I give him the nod. I wrote down. I just want to make sure I didn't miss a point about how close it was. I wrote down. I'm not upset either way. Brunson's been better offensively in a lot of different ways. Brunson did dominate the head-to-head, like 35 points per game compared to Dame's like 22
Those
and a
were
half
one
and
of his best
23.
nights. Yeah,
Yeah, unbelievable. Dominated head-to-head, and the Bucks only lead by 3 games in the standings. So yeah, I hit all that. Yeah, like just the criteria thing is my problem, and it's a bigger argument that would
it's
be better
murky.
served.
It's never. Yeah,
It would be better served not 55 minutes into a midseason award podcast, but
yeah.
it's you have to have your own criteria at the end of the day, and I don't really have a strong argument either way. Like I said for 2 of the awards earlier. So,
Right.
in the West, we'll probably disagree on one of these. I went with Shea, Luka, LeBron, AD, and Nikola Jokic.
Okay, so I had Durant instead of AD, which I guess
Yeah,
lines up with
that's
the All
with
NBA.
the
So, I mean,
exactly.
again, with the there's no
It
wrong answer there.
also, it
Absolutely
also
not.
lines up with what happened in the West. So I'm not. I just
Right.
think the fact that both those guys are healthy. I know I said I take winning into
Good.
consideration.
Yeah.
No one takes winning consideration with the All Star game. Let's just be real. No one does.
No.
So and the Suns are like what 7th. So LeBron James and
Yeah.
Anthony Davis, the level of play and the fact that they're both healthy to this point to both be starters in the All Star game, I just had to give it to them because they've just both been that good. And again,
Yeah.
I
That's good for
think
the
I've
league.
been
Yeah.
I think I've been sleeping on Durant more than I should have. All right, we'll keep rolling. All rookie first team. I went with. I think I like the format of just seeing how many disagree with. This is working.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the obvious ones that we all have in here because of positionless. We both have Jaime Jaquez, Chet Holmgren, and Victor Wembanyama. I think that's
Yes.
completely clear, right? Those are the three betting favorites. Like just
right.
That's it. I went with, and I don't feel great about it because it's positionless. But I do still like to try to at least make some kind of team. Like I need a ball handler for a team that
Right.
isn't
It has to
gonna
make
ever
sense
play.
on the floor. Yeah.
A lot of people now with the new rule don't agree with that, but I do still try to do that. I went with Keontae George and Brandon Podziemski, and you could argue anybody else in that spot because I think Brandon Podziemski has to be on there. He's been unbelievable, and I think he's like 8th or 6th in points per game for rookies, which for a team like that, the fact that he's played as much as he has is a godsend miracle for a team that probably should be fighting for the 4 seed in the West, not for the 8 seed. So.
Yeah, I mean, some people dig him because he plays a good number of minutes when the game's decided either way, but he's been incredible in that time. So I had him and I had Lively. I think that Lively in Dallas has had a pretty good impact. I know that Dallas is not atop the West or anything, but I think he's had a pretty good presence. A team that he filled the need for a team in a way that I felt like he should get the nod for this. So I had Podziemski and I had Lively as my 4th and 5th guy after the clear 3, I think, or if not unanimous, should be.
I know we gave Şengün the flowers earlier. Do we feel like we're snubbing Cam Whitmore? Because I love Cam Whitmore as a player coming into the year. Had him like 4th.
Yeah. I mean, it's none of those things. You almost miss guys like this because of where the teams are and the attention the teams get. And a guy like Şengün, where if you're watching the Rockets, you're probably paying attention to Şengün. Whitmore is the guy you're like, I got to look him up. Like, this guy's really, really good. But if you just don't catch that 5-10 minutes a night where he's really contributing in a big way, especially for a rookie, then I think it's easy to miss. But if there was a second team, I think he's certainly squarely in that discussion. So,
and the real second team that we don't vote on, of course, he'll be on it without a doubt, and I'd be shocked if he isn't. But 10 points per game, or 10.5, 3.8 rebounds, 47, 39, 65 splits. I just love when a rookie shoots like ridiculous numbers from three, but terrible from the free throw line. It's always funny to me. His last 5 games, let me make sure I got the dates right. 17 against Utah. This is, by the way, all averaging 16 minutes a game. Let me make sure I got that number right. Yeah, 16.3 minutes a game, right? So some of these numbers may have fluctuated based on his minutes played. Lately, he's played almost into the 30s, like 27, which is a lot more minutes than he's averaged. But anyway, against Utah in a win, he had 17 points. The only bad game in the last 5, he had 5 points against Boston. And that game was a lot closer than I think people realized, 107-116. Played 27 minutes in that night, but Boston shut him down. Overtime loss to Portland. He had 12. He had 24 against Charlotte, CHO. I want to make sure I got the abbreviation right. Yeah, that's Charlotte, right? God, that's so weird, isn't it? Okay.
Should be A, but yeah.
Yeah, they need to change that. And 24 there, and then 19 against Brooklyn in a loss. So he's been really good, at least obviously turning on lately. So I don't hate the Lively case because positionless. Who cares who has the 3 of the best rookies have been centers? Exactly. So, duh. All right, now we're out of the breathe. Now we're in an hour. I think we can kind of get through these pretty quickly the next couple. But biggest surprise team. We're kind of in the category now for the listeners if they're new here. We're done with the actual things that you'll see at the ballots. And, these are just the kind of 2 Pointers podcast dumb things I threw together a couple years ago. Biggest surprise team. I don't care how you interpret that. I think there have been some on both sides of the argument.
Yeah, it's the team on my shirt right here because I'm about as diehard as they come, and I never, ever, ever would have been like, "Yeah, we're gonna do midseason awards." I'm gonna watch them fight for the 1 seed. Like, just they're so far ahead of schedule. I won't say light years ahead because that phrase has been ruined for me forever. But I think that the fact that they're the second youngest team in the NBA and they're doing this, coming off of a play-in appearance where they won a game and then got smoked off the floor, I think that this jump, and it's not that, maybe they get a ding because Bill Simmons said they're going to win it all. But I think that, the fact that they've made that leap from fringe play-in to where as far as we know now, through 45 games, their coach might be coaching LeBron James in 2 weeks. So, I mean, it's that jump. And even I kind of took into account where did I think the Thunder would be. And I took the win total over preseason, like 44.5. But I never saw this coming, ever. Not necessarily ever, but not this year. Like, this seems too soon, almost too quick, but they keep backing it up. And, they're going to do things like young teams do, like lose to the Pistons. But I think that overall, the win resume is incredible. They've won, like I said, 2 games in Denver. They beat Boston. They beat the Knicks. They've got a really, really, really good resume where if we're going to subject them to something like the net equivalent in the NBA, like they would be up there as far as like the quality of the wins. And it's hilarious how bad some of the losses are given who they have beaten. And I think that all kind of bakes into the surprise part of it.
20-10 against the conference. I wish they just showed you the record of against the other conference because that would just make this a whole lot easier. Thanks, NBA.com. Right. Just for funsies, you're 71% of the way to that ticket hitting. That should tell you every bit of what you need to know about how impressive they've been. Right. I went with the T-Wolves because
that's fair.
I made it very clear that I thought the Rudy Gobert trade was one of the worst 5 trades in NBA history, and I didn't. That's not hyperbole. So for that reason alone, I can't really back down and say that this isn't the most surprising team. That's because fair. It shouldn't have worked. It shouldn't be working. I know that they, Cat had almost 70, and coach went crazy and defensive number problems, whatever. I understand that they have flaws, but if we're talking surprise, I just look at the standings right now and I go, like, I thought the Thunder were going to be good. Not this good, of course, like we all thought, but I had an idea of, okay, I believe in 7 guys on the roster minimum.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in Ant.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't make that clear enough preseason. So for them to sit here right now and be the exact same record, I have to say it's Minnesota for that reason alone. The Clippers deserve a very, very, very obvious shout out in this category.
Yeah.
To be fair though, losing wise, I thought maybe you'd have an argument for somebody like from I can't believe they're really bad. Memphis obviously missed Ja for 25 games. A bunch of injuries. Yeah. I'm not surprised for knowing what we know. People would say Golden State 19-24.
Yeah.
I would say there's just a lot more writing on the wall than we think there. Am I surprised they're 19 and 24? Yeah, a little bit, but not enough to say someone else didn't deserve the category. So it really isn't a losing team where I'm like surprised. Like the Lakers are even 24 and 23 in a really good West, ninth.
Right.
That's just we don't have enough data yet. All right, I'll keep going here. Biggest disappointing team. Again, I just laid out the case. There really isn't one, but I know
Yeah,
there's
I
probably an
had
answer.
Golden State and Atlanta written here. I just think that, yeah,
Atlanta.
Atlanta's
Okay.
bad. I mean, it's there. I mean, I mean, maybe the Trae Young franchise player piece of it isn't quite all what it cracked up to be. I mean, you traded Luca for him. So you're never ever going to live that down. But
No.
that being said, the DeJounte Murray piece has been a disaster, just relative to how the team is done. They've not accomplished what they set out to with that trade, and they may end up trading him back out for less than they even got initially. So it's a mess. Quinn Snyder may be caught up in the middle of this. They have a notoriously quick trigger with coaches, so I don't think they're going to stop short of anything to try and protect Trae Young and I guess build around him. I mean, I don't see a path towards the top of the East for this Atlanta team. And not that there was going to be, I mean, they weren't expected to be the 1 or 2 seed or anything, but to be sitting currently as the 10 seed, half a game out of missing the postseason altogether, I think that's pretty disappointing just because of how good we thought this team could be.
I thought about Atlanta when I put this together, and then I went, was the East just bad? Miami 24 and 22 without Butler most of the year. Orlando
Right.
probably should be better than that. Chicago ahead of them. And then I looked at the standings behind them when you said it, and I started thinking about okay, I think I agree with you. Brooklyn 18 and 27. They don't really have an identity, right? They have Bridges to Cam Johnson, just missing an identity there. Cam Thomas. The Raptors, who officially have blown it up, so just take that out of the way. They're 16 and 30, right?
Yeah.
Charlotte, who's 10 and 34, they miss LaMelo for 70% of the season.
Right. It was
Washington, who's intentionally trying to suck.
They want to be there.
And Detroit, who's somehow worse. So that's your case for Atlanta being disappointing. Is they're definitely better than those 5 teams, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And they're 3.5 games behind Chicago, who, without a Kobe White resurgence, like we've talked about, I tried to think
would
of a
be
better
blowing
comparison.
it up too.
They would either be
and they
blowing
still
it
maybe
up,
should.
They shouldn't be 3.5 games ahead of Atlanta at the All-Star break or near it. So I think the more I laid that out, Atlanta's the answer. So who did you actually technically go with, though? You said Golden State.
Yeah, I had Atlanta.
Same argument.
Golden State was my or.
Okay.
The
same
or
argument.
My or for that.
Same argument, but the West is harder. The Rockets currently sit 2 games ahead of Golden State, which I thought was interesting.
That's funny. I mean, Steven Silas died for that, but that's just.
Which is a perfect segue. The should have been fired last month award, the honorable winner last year, which was Steven Silas. Still workshopping a name. Would love to hear it in the comments. AKA the Adrian Griffin Award. Probably shouldn't have been hired in the first place. I went with Steve Clifford. I think he was the only answer. And unless you're going to want to tell me that Monty Williams deserves one of the biggest buyouts in sports history, but I went with Steve Clifford.
He doesn't deserve the buyout. He deserves to get fired, but no, he does not deserve the buyout. But he's owed that. So
yeah, he would.
I mean,
is it Clifford?
I think it is. Projecting out, I had Doc Rivers because we know he's going to lose in the second round, but I think that it's not fair to say that yet. Yeah. He's already saying, "Woe is me, my job is hard." Come on, you can't jump off the TV set and then just start complaining. I don't. You have Giannis. Are you kidding me? You have Damian Lillard, and your life's just so damn difficult that you have to get in front of a mic within 10 minutes of landing in Milwaukee and complain about it. That does not bode well for me. But cutting it off where we are before they collapse, I have to. I mean, Clifford and Snyder were the 2 names I had. I think we've harped on the Hawks enough, but it's just you're not changing the LaMelo piece of it, so something else has to change. And the first guy to fall on the sword every year in the NBA is the coach. The Lakers do it every 3 years. It doesn't matter if you're good or not. It's going to happen. You're going to protect your franchise guy. And Quinn Snyder is a hell of a coach. He may fall victim of this whole mess in Atlanta, and he may go somewhere else and be just as good as he was in Utah for at least the regular season. So, I mean, I think it's just an unfortunate circumstance that we see play out 4 to 5 times in the NBA every year. But Charlotte's got to do something. They're not going to change the guy in LaMelo. Traded Rozier, so that's a kind of a sign of where they think this is kind of tilting. I mean, what are they right now?
I just
10
said
and
it earlier.
35. I mean,
10 and
that's
35.
embarrassing.
Yeah.
Yeah, lowest average point differential in the NBA. It's something's got to change, and it will be Clifford before it's LaMelo. So I think they're going to be back in the coaching pool.
I just wrote down reset for a rebuild, not the defensive coach we thought from years past, and then you get a young
No,
quality assistant and just build from there. Because at the end of the day,
that's
the
what the
answer
Thunder did. I mean, it's
the answer for Charlotte is not like the guy that should fall on the sword should always be the coach. Like it's not always the answer, but in this case, like they shouldn't have fired Borrego first of all,
no, they
especially
shouldn't have.
now knowing what we know now, it probably would have worked
Right.
out the same either way. He probably would have been fired for somebody that would have started this rebuild, but they just need to continue to lean into the rebuild because I like their young core. I love I
It
as
has
much as it
potential.
pains me,
Yeah.
who was a Miller hater, for what
Well, I
draft
mean,
people think. For what draft people think.
yeah.
But to have LaMelo, Miller, and Williams, by the way, never going to let down the fact that I was right about Mark Williams. Just needs that
Right.
to be said because people are literally publicly podcast people, NBA people who talk about the Hornets somehow are like, Mark, the Hornets have a good young core, and I'm listening to it actively in the car, going, tell me who the third player in that core is. Like, yeah, give me more because I want to hear this because I want people to understand why it should be Mark Williams and why it has been. Enough.
Right.
All right, one player you could have on your team, no trade in this ridiculous 2 pointers podcast scenario. They just magically appear, and there's no implication on the other team. The player just ceases to exist on that team. Don't know
I
other
mean,
way to put that.
the easy cop out, no thought answer is Giannis, but that's boring. I'm gonna go for a reasonable one because I think it really could happen. It's been rumored a lot. Laurie Markkinen is about all this team needs, I think, to really be like they're by way of the standings a contender now. But as far as like my belief in them through the 16 wins you need to win a championship, that would about do it. If they were able to swing for the fences and do that, and I know Danny Ainge is the holder of his contract, so good luck. But I think that if in this scenario we're removing the trade piece, we can not even contact Danny Ainge to hear about how he wants 87 picks. I think that that would do it for me. He's been great this year, specifically over 40% from three, 87% from the free throw line. Doesn't get to the line a ton, but when he's there, he makes it, and you can't always bank on that from big. So I think that's going to be key because this Thunder team is going to be in a lot of close games. It would at worst help the rebounding situation. You alluded to defensive rebounding. It's bad. We've gotten away with it to this point a little bit. We do struggle against bigger teams. We just lost to Minnesota by 6, and I'm sure the rebounding splits are atrocious there. So RIP to Mark coaching the All-Star game. But the offense right now is 6th in offensive rating as a team. Before tonight's game, I'm sure they'll dip a little bit. But he adds to that. He's very, very skilled offensively. I don't think he'd get in the way much. And having him alongside Chet would just be incredible to watch, even for it'd be someone would have written on. I don't think he's under contract for past next season. So it'll be a year and a half. And with contracts coming up, the guys we have now, I don't know if we can make that work as far as salary cap and retaining him, but we'd have a hell of a chance at 2 rings this season and next with him in tow.
Yeah, funny you say things dipping. The Lakers will dip in the standings. They're losing to the Rockets 135 to 116. LeBron and AD played 28 and 36 minutes, respectively. I will be very short and sweet because you technically answered my question. I didn't know you. I went with, for the Lakers specifically, you mentioned like Giannis, but that's boring.
Right. Everybody wants Giannis. Yeah.
Thank you for doing that because you've done this with me long enough now. I appreciate the effort because let's just be real. The answer is, well, pick any, Jokic.
Like, give me Jokic. Yeah, right. Come on. Yeah.
Duh, right? But I wrote down SGA, but if I couldn't have him, right? So if that was just the Giannis type answer, I think Brunson or Maxey would be really good for the Lakers. I don't know why.
I would love to see Maxey over there. Yeah.
I think that's probably the right answer because I sat here and I'm like, well, you don't want somebody to take away from AD. You don't want a guy that's going to be an overpasser like Halliburton to take away from what LeBron's been as a passer this year, even though it probably couldn't hurt. And then I'm like, what about like there's got to be some defensive stalwart? And I'm like, we already argued defensive player of the year. There's really not a clear cut guy that I could just be like, give me Scottie Pippen, right? It's not like that kind of deal. So there really isn't a good answer, and the Lakers are obviously, as I just laid out, not doing so hot right now. So Maxey, I think,
Right.
changes their complete dynamic of their offense. So, who I did have questions about as a shooter coming into the year, squash those. So,
Yeah.
my question for you was: should the Thunder make a trade and attempt to win a title this year? So, first of all,
See,
good thinking.
I've
But
wrestled
you
with
already
that
laid
a
the case out
lot.
with Lowry, like you already have, and like
Yeah.
my follow up would be: let me put it to you this way: is a big move for a star the more ideal option, or is it a smaller move for some like to move someone like Aaron Wiggins, who's been good,
Mm.
but to
Yes.
help he
Yeah.
would be in that trade to get another big man, which is
Oh,
what you
him,
laid out with the Lowry.
Pokashevsky, Trey Man, all the seconds, Bertans. Those are all. I mean, as a fan, you hate to see guys just shipped out, but if it's contributing towards something like that, and I don't. What I wrestle with is, do I think we could truly win a title this year? And obviously, I want to say, well, yeah, we win 4 out of 5 games. It feels like, but I still struggle with it because I mean, the Pistons piece of it, that's just a stupid loss. You're going to have one over the course of 80 games. We just lost to Minnesota at home. That's not great. But to fall back on after a very, very ugly loss and a hard fought loss, you're 1 game back in the West. I think that kind of speaks to the team's potential. Um, the data on teams kind of making this leap in that first year as serious playoff teams hosting playoff series, they don't tend to win titles. Not to say we shouldn't go for it. I don't think we should kind of. I mean, Presti said we want to make an arrival, not an appearance. I mean, I think that holds true. I think you stay the course that's gotten you this far. And we really have only seen Chet for not even 50 games of his career. And we're already talking about should they tinker around and go win a title just cause. I mean, I think it's incredible. And really what hit home is you were mentioning Shea as like the layup easy, boring answer for who would you immediately put on like the most storied franchise in the NBA. Which kind of took me for a loop. I was like, wait a minute, what? But it
But
makes a lot of sense, obviously,
thinking
you think
about
about
what
it.
they need, yeah, like that might be
Right, that
surprising to
too. Yeah.
folks, right? But what
Right.
the Lakers don't need Giannis. Like they don't need a guy
No.
that's gonna clog up the lane
It's
any more
yeah,
than it already is, right? So
right.
yes, when you think of like the NBA, right? But I told you he's
Right.
MVP. He's first team All
It's yeah,
NBA as he should be. So yeah, I mean the answer's not far
it's just
fetched.
incredible. But yeah, the fan of me says hell yeah, go for it. But if obviously Presti's more pragmatic than the average fan and me, so I think I guess my way of saying is if we don't, I'm not upset about it. But I think that it makes sense to me to go for it. I think that we've won in Denver twice. I realize that's December, and the second round Western Conference Finals is an entirely different sport. To be honest, it's just not the same. That's why we see Philly win 55 games every year, and they can't make the Eastern Conference Finals. It's just different. You have to have guys that can perform in that spot. And as a byproduct of their youth, we don't have a lot of guys that experience. So I think that would I love to see them not stand pat? They're going to do something. They have too many picks, too many assets. The guys that don't play for them could play so many other places that they're going to make something happen. But is it a Laurie sized swing for the moon type thing? Probably not. But I don't necessarily hate it because I think that's more of a belief inside the organization that like we don't need necessarily to go for the home run because the guys we have are essentially equate to a home run now. And just the being tentative to fully say, okay, these guys with very limited playoff experience, you go all in on this year. But I mean, these contracts, the young guys are going to start to hit. So the window, like any team, is going to close. It's not getting bigger; it's getting smaller. So I would love it, but I'm also very conscientious of how Presti works, and he's going to put us in the best position. So if I had to bet right now, I'd say we make some mid-level moves. We move guys like Wiggins, Poku, Trey Man, the guys I mentioned, the replaceable guys that no one else knows about but me and you, or people that mess around the trade machine all day. So I think that we're more likely to see 2 or 3 moves that wouldn't constitute 10,000 Woj retweets than something crazy. But I think either way, I'm excited to see how we come out of the deadline.
I think Lowry's the right answer. I think it's
It
more I
just
sit here and
feels
think
so
about it.
right. Yeah.
The only problem is his contract. And people are wondering,
That's
like,
yeah.
well, what's the problem? Next year's partially guaranteed at 18
Right.
million, and after that, he's an unrestricted free agent because of his scenario coming over from
I know.
Cleveland, contract running out. So you're talking about already having to pay all these young guys. Well, he's 26. He's literally our age.
Right,
So
which is insane.
somebody's going to get paid $38 million, and it's going to be him.
Yeah,
And you
as he
make that trade,
should, to be frank.
you got to be clear that that's gonna. They've got to be sure that that guy's
You
going to
have two
resign.
shots at it. That's right.
So that's my hesitation.
Did you see the latest ESPN attempt at basketball trades with the Thunder today?
I don't.
Just
I don't
quickly,
particularly indulge in them, but yes, I'd love to hear this.
enough Thunder fans in my Twitter timeline were so, I think, in shock of it. Thunder received Jacob Pertl and Dennis Schroeder. The Raptors received Bertans, Poku, Trey Mann, Aaron Wiggins, 2 firsts and 2 seconds.
And
That just
it's just Pirtle and Schroeder.
yes. End of trade half. That I know we have 40 picks, but we can't just be giving them away. Like this is not like clearance rack for picks just because we
I
can't
mean,
use them all. Like
unless it's the
that's
worst of four, like in that Siakam trade, unless it's like a worst of four teams, like
even that
sure,
just
you know, I don't know.
that would make
That
me think
Siakam thing was
somebody had a
funny.
gun to Pressie's head. I just
That trade made
but
me laugh though. Y'all were involved in that. Y'all were one of the four teams in the
yeah,
worst of four in that.
right.
So I was like, you found a way to still to make your way into a Pacers Raptors trade. It's like I don't. This is just
Yeah.
ridiculous. Which
We'll
is
get
probably
a
where this
47 second out of it. Yeah, it's great.
Two notable things that won't matter once the spot goes up. The Nuggets and the Bucks are 65-67 halfway through the third quarter
That's
live,
a
and
good
then the
one.
Mavs Magic, both on League Pass, by the way. The NBA TV
Mm,
game is Blazers Sixers.
Jesus Christ.
There's
That's
got to be a
with no
quota,
MB
right?
because
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, you
This
can flex NBA TV like tip off. Who cares? Like, I don't
it's a
get that.
Blazers home game. That's the issue. It's not an NBA thing.
Oh my god, that's
So it's
just
I mean obviously it's an NBA thing, but both those games are Magic Mavericks is 96-94 in the fourth quarter. So
that's a good game
Paolo
too.
25, Luca 31, 7 and 10. So all right. Who wins the NBA finals? Who makes it from the East and West? And then plug away and we can get out of here.
I'm gonna keep it short and sweet. There is a Thunder legend at guard that deserves a ring. He does not play for the Warriors because they deserve nothing. He plays for the Clippers. It's Russell Westbrook. I think they win the title. I think they rip Oklahoma City's heart out in the Western Conference Finals, and I think they beat the Celtics because the Celtics have morphed into the basketball Bills, unfortunately. So I think that they just, why not break their hearts one more time? They're a city of champions. Brady had 80 Super Bowls. They have 15 titles. It's time for somebody else. So I think that, and I hope this wouldn't push Steve Ballmer into heart failure, but I think that the Clippers right now, as I see it, I think this is not going to be a popular sentiment, at least not the Western piece of this or the champion, to be honest. But I think this Clippers team, there's substance to it. James Harden is not fat. He's engaged. He's locked in. That may change literally tomorrow morning. But as we see here, not projecting out, I guess technically are. I think the Clippers, the way they've come on since they figured out the hard piece of it, Westbrook to the bench, just making those pieces fit in a way that constitutes a championship contender. I think they've done it. They'll be an interesting deadline team to watch too. I don't think they're very flexible, but there are probably minor things they do want to address. Um, I think yeah, I'll take the Clippers. I was very tempted to take the Thunder, but I don't want to jinx them anymore. Bill Simmons already has it, so I will take the Clippers over. To me, the clear top team in the East. That's Boston.
Really quick before you plug. I do think the Clippers is a good shout. I am surprised by it, but I also think we have a lot of stuff left to play out. So,
Oh, half a
um,
season. Yeah,
the Balmer heart issue things is funny though. If the price tag of that arena is not going to give him heart problems, I don't think the games will. So I'm just
that's a
at this
good
point,
point. Yeah,
he's just an iron heart there. So, I went with Nuggets Celtics. Sue me if it's boring. I don't care. I think the Celtics
I mean,
finally
if
get
it's
over
right,
the
it's
hump.
right. Yeah,
Yeah, but and like at the end of the day, the title thing, I think the Braves thing is really funny. My argument would be the Clippers are kind of the Braves a little, or the Braves Clippers are kind of
Bills.
the
Yeah. I got you.
Bills. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah,
Buffalo Braves is what I had in my head. NBA history isn't on the Clippers side. Obviously, Boston, is a little bit there, and I love that you gave
right.
them the wrong amount of titles, which will piss Celtics fans off even more. So I went with Celtics in 6 because I think
Talk about do. Yeah,
and the fact that they are the only team in the East that can neutralize Jokic in any way. So
I think that's fair. Yeah.
I don't think it's right, but it's at least an argument. All right, plug away, and then like I said, we'll get out of here.
Yeah, mentioned off the top, me and my college roommates are in the midst of wrapping up the NFL season, where the 1009 podcast will be talking all things Purdy miracle win and the Lamar epic collapse, all those things. We get ready for the Super Bowl, which is a very recent rematch of Niners Chiefs. We're really excited to dive into that, who we think wins. Baseball is starting before we know it. As soon as the weather starts to flip, we will have guys in spring training. A lot of things to talk about there. My roommates both Braves fans. They're going to be pumped for that as they look to get over the hump, even though they won it like 2 years ago. So that'll be exciting for that. Clemson baseball starting up. We'll be talking Clemson football recruiting. We do have the Clemson slant. All three of us are grads. So, that bias will not be hidden, as was my Oklahoma City bias not hidden here. So on Twitter at the 1009, we tweet out links, all kinds of stuff, try and get a little chaotic in replies and try and get some traction. So if you see some crazy sports takes, that's just us trying to get clicks. So if you click on it, I appreciate it.
Love it. Next time we'll talk. I love how you didn't mention Clemson basketball anywhere in there.
No, I didn't.
Had a really interesting result the other night. Next time we talk, It will probably be legalized sports gambling will probably be a thing in North Carolina. So on a podcast,
I hate
at least.
you for that.
So look, hey, it'll be really good fun around here. So as always, links for him will be description below. 1009 football. Keep up with stuff like you're not going to hear it here, as y'all know. So got to find it somewhere. So got to be able to support. So. Thanks again, as always.